According to findings from several studies, anywhere from 20 to 40% of people being treated for cancer use cannabis or cannabinoids to manage side effects like nausea, pain, sleeplessness, anxiety, and stress. The growing popularity of cannabis products among people with cancer has tracked with the increasing number of states that have legalized cannabis for medical use. But research has lagged on whether and which cannabis products are a safe or effective way to help with cancer-related symptoms. The first ever guidelines published this year on cannabis use from the American Society of Clinical Oncology put it bluntly. Cannabis and/or cannabinoid access and use by adults with cancer has outpaced the science supporting their clinical use. Among the most pressing challenges caused by the deficit of scientific evidence is that oncologists and other cancer care providers feel ill-equipped to talk with patients about medical cannabis. In one study, nearly 40% of oncologists and oncology nurses said they were comfortable offering guidance to patients on cannabis use, but only 13% felt knowledgeable about cannabis. Patients are highly interested in cannabis to help them deal with cancer's physical and mental fallout, said Dr. Richard Lee, who heads the Chang Family Center for Integrative Oncology at the City of Hope. As the legal landscape of medical cannabis continues to change, providers are only going to be seeing more patients who are using tropical flavored cannabis gummies or mandarin orange flavored cannabis tinctures. So even without reliable evidence, it's important to ask patients if they are using cannabis products and for what purpose. And for now, treat it like any other medication and explain that it has potential harms and potential benefits. According to Dr. Susanna Ulahanen, an oncologist at the University of Oklahoma's Stevenson Cancer Center, her younger patients are most likely to use cannabis, often to help with issues like anxiety and trouble sleeping. Her older patients, however, are more reluctant. And when they do ask about it, it's usually when standard medications she prescribes for problems like pain or lack of appetite aren't cutting it. It's usually when they bring it up to me, she said. I've tried this and it's not working. What do you think about trying medical cannabis instead? Access to cannabis is one thing, but whether it is safe to use is another question altogether. We absolutely don't have a good handle on safety, said Dr. Gary Ellison of the National Cancer Institute's Division of Cancer Control. One of the biggest concerns is whether cannabis products might interfere with patients' cancer treatments. For example, some studies have suggested that cannabis can make immunotherapy treatments less effective. It's known that cannabis can suppress the immune system, explained Dr. Mohab Ibrahim. There are other potential downsides. Cannabis can be a powerful sedative and interact with other medications. In other words, if somebody is taking another medication that makes them drowsy, using cannabis at the same time may magnify that drowsiness, increasing the risk for things like falls and car accidents. Explaining to patients that potential harms and lack of evidence around cannabis is challenging. During discussions with patients, providers are often swimming against a current of wishful thinking or misinformation. Dr. Ulahanen strongly recommends that patients tell their oncologist what cannabis products they are taking. Dr. Ellison finds that this doesn't appear to be happening. Only about 20% of patients using cannabis report having talked to their oncologist about it. So based on the comments of the doctors in this article, I can understand why patients are not discussing cannabis with their physicians. I feel that physicians don't take enough of the blame for the lack of communication and the lack of experience. They also don't take the initiative to learn from patients. There are cannabis specialists who are willing to share knowledge. To treat cannabis like any other medication, it's to ignore its greatest benefit. The simple answer to cannabis interacting with medications is to reduce the use of one or the other. Often medications that cause drowsiness are used for sleep or anxiety and can be replaced with cannabis. As well, cannabinoids have demonstrated a synergistic anti-tumor effect when combined with chemotherapy. So I suggest that physicians look beyond single agents and take the leap into the more complex and effective world of cannabis therapeutics. This is Dr. Jean Talleyrand with High at 9 News.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, I think a lot of this has to do too, Dr. T, with the amount of doctors that are actually educated on cannabis from a medical perspective, right? Because there's a lack of education in medical school around cannabis. I think a lot of it stems from that.
Yeah, we have to pay attention where the education comes from. When you're working in a paradigm that's not open to botanical medicine, it's hard to educate on botanical medicine. So we need to either adopt this new paradigm of botanical medicine along with traditional medicine, and then we can educate ourselves. But for now, we're struggling with something that's foreign to physicians.
We did something really cool in Colorado many years ago, and I hope that it's still going on. I haven't stayed in touch with them, but it's a conference called MJ for MDs. So it's actual cannabinoid-based education. But the difference in that conference was it's not just them wasting time. They were getting actual credit hours, which if you have a medical license, you have to get a certain number to keep that license active. So that was really exciting to be able to provide those credit hours and actual education from actual cannabis experts. Because I think taking that fear factor out of it, like, you became a doctor because you wanted to help people, I assume, Dr. T, not because you wanted to hurt them. And it's a little scary to add any substance if you don't truly understand it. So I think, giving that safe education is a really important factor, and it's going to be huge in the realm of patient access.
I feel like that'd be a good name for a strain, Air with Caution.
Dr. T, a lot of my doctor friends, they're my age, and a lot of them say, I mean, I'm not gonna go too deep. I'm not gonna go friends. I actually do. Show you my group chat. They're all brothers from Virginia and in Chicago. But anyways, they all tell me that they would never do chemo. Right, they would never do chemo, pump that poison into their bodies. Is that something that is prevalent in the traditional doctors' realm of doctors, I guess, that they would not do chemo themselves, but they would administer it?
Well, I mean, I don't want to do chemo, but I don't know if I'm diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. I might change my mind real quickly. So, it's hard to. I'd talk to the cancer patients and see what they decide. I mean, everybody has an individual decision on what kind of treatment they're willing to accept. But there's, yes, chemo is poison. It's got a lot of collateral damage, but part of that also means that it works for some cancers where we don't have a solution. And so you have to choose between death and chemo. I hope you make the right choice.
I'd say the people I've seen do best with cancer have done both chemotherapy, radiation, and alternative healing methods. I know it's only anecdotal, but I have more than a handful of friends that I've seen go through this HPV-caused throat cancer. And every single one of them that chose to do the natural-only method died over a multi-year period, painfully, slowly. And all of the ones who did chemo only survived with some pretty serious damage. The ones who did both chemo adjusted their diet, meditated more, exercised more, looked to alternative healing methods along with allopathic medicine, thriving. And I think that, rather than lockstep of everything involved in allopathic medicine, we have to realize that all of these are tools. None of them are perfected. And for our families, just as an example, for our family, my son's 19 years old and has multiple sclerosis, and he's going to have to go get HSCT therapy, which is a combination of harvesting his bone marrow stem cells and then giving him chemotherapy to kill his immune system, basically kill his bone marrow, and re-injecting him with stem cells to rebuild his immune system. What's happening with this therapy is over 99% of the people who get this therapy, no more MS attacks for the rest of their life, are basically cured of the MS autoimmune attacks. And so oftentimes, it's not just a yes or a no. I think one should really make the choice that is right for oneself, really look into it, study, advocate and stay away from knee-jerk reactions based on emotions. These are really important decisions, and you should make them with your mind, with as much input and information as you can.
Yeah, it's really, it's a tough road, right? It's a tough fork.
No good answers. It's one of those things where
choose that path.
When you have some of this stuff, you don't have a good answer. You have a bunch of options that have probabilities and horrific outcomes and better outcomes, and that's part of being an adult. It's part of being an adult, and not to get political, but it kind of goes to this vote and how we have to vote in general is like, a lot of times you don't get the happy, shiny, great answer, and the horrible answer full of evil. That's overly simplistic. Right. That's for 3-year-olds and for movies. What you get is answers that both are kind of good and kind of suck, and then you have to use your discernment, your intellect, and your reasoning to decide which of these good and bad answers is best for you. And you just hope for the best after that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, hopefully we can teach these younger generations to be more preventative, make better choices on the front end, so they don't have to worry about this on the back end.
Fair enough.
Right.
And on